Hello, and welcome back to the Contribute More podcast. Today, you'll hear from Sara Kilner, the Partnership Fundraising Lead at Rape Crisis England and Wales. In this episode, we'll explore how to set up an inclusive fundraising challenge, how to balance fundraiser empowerment with ensuring accurate messaging, how to foster a community around a fundraising challenge, and much more. Enjoy! Sara, it's lovely of you to come and talk to us today. To get us started, to ease us into the conversation, do you want to tell us about Rape Crisis England and Wales as a charity, and then about Step Out in Solidarity, the fundraising challenge that we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you for having me on. So Rape Crisis England and Wales is a umbrella body. We've got 39 rape crisis centres across England and Wales. And these are all independent charities in their own right that are delivering advocacy and support to victims and survivors. So that could be face-to-face counselling, it could be group work, it could be having an advocate that helps you through the justice system if you've chosen to report, and helping you navigate the criminal justice system. And what we do as the umbrella body is provides national service standards, so we ensure that there's kind of a consistency of support happening across all of those centres, so making sure it's kind of trauma-informed, it's coming from a feminist perspective, kind of history of the rape crisis movement, essentially. And then member centres in return sort of provide us with their sort of data and insights into how many people they have on waiting lists, sort of different kinds of support they're having to offer more than others. And we use that to make sure that we're influencing on a national level. So member centres don't pay for that support. We also give them kind of training in peer spaces throughout the year for different peer practice groups, different training. So I run a fundraising peer group actually for all the fundraisers and all the individual centres. And we do national conference. But then rather than kind of having it as a paid thing to be a member, it's just that they provide us with their data and we can make sure that we've got those insights on a local level to influence nationally. So criminal justice system nationally, as well as the education system and health as well. So everything where we can try and improve the experience for victims and survivors who need that support in all those different institutions. And then we also provide our own support through the 24/7 support line. So this is where a victim and survivor can ring or get on contact on email or live chat at any time, any day and night. And it doesn't matter when they might have experienced any form of sexual violence. It could have been years ago. They could just get in touch and have somebody to speak to right there and then. We sort of support membership, the local centres. We also do influencing, and then we also run our own service as well. But despite all that, we're actually quite a small team. There's only, I think, about 18 of us at the moment. And I'm the only person doing fundraising. Well, the administrator helps me as well. But yeah, I'm sort of doing all the forms of different fundraising. So whether that's grant and trust bid writing or doing virtual challenges like this one. So it's quite busy.
Yep.
But a really, really amazing organisation and a really lovely team to be part of. And I've been there about 18 months. And when I came into post, it was at quite a unique time where there was a lot of interest in the work that we're doing. A lot of kind of very high profile cases in the news, and also the time of kind of Sarah Everard vigils, and just a real outcry of like the general public wanting to, I guess, do something to support and really change the system to make it work better for victims and survivors. So we really wanted to create like a virtual challenge that kind of resonated with those supporters about being in solidarity. Sort of came up with Step Out in Solidarity, which was a 30-day challenge. It started at the start of Sexual Abuse and Sexual Violence Awareness Week, which is normally around the 6th of February. And then it ended on International Women's Day on the 8th of March. We, like you said, before we sort of got started on the podcast, we wanted to make it really inclusive. We wanted to make sure that anyone could join. So it wasn't about setting a limit on the amount of miles you had to do or any particular exercise or activity, really. It was just about getting out and doing something every day and kind of showing up and being in solidarity every day for those 30 days. I think that kind of gives you lots to probably talk about.
Yeah, no, fantastic overview. I think the one thing I would say what I was thinking while you were talking is about, I mean, first of all, the work that you do at Rape Crisis is really important and incredible. I am so encouraged as I speak to more people in the charity sector just to see how much work gets done by so few people. There are so many small charities who you look at from the outside and you think they must have huge teams because of the work that they do, and actually it's a few people, and I think it's just amazing the amount that you cover with such a small group. And you touched on a few things that I am really interested in talking to you about with Step Out in Solidarity. I think we'll come back to the inclusivity piece a little bit later. But initially, I wondered whether there were any other considerations that you had while setting up the challenge. I know that you spoke about wanting it to be inclusive, and you've also picked some, I suppose, temporal milestones in the year, which are really important. And I don't know whether that just you just happened to be um, thinking about the event as those dates were coming up, or whether those dates informed you wanting to set up a fundraising event, or whether that's just coincidence or whatever, or any other considerations you had.
I mean, part of this is, I think, me as a fundraiser, I really like fundraisers that link in with some messaging. So I really wanted to pick dates that kind of made sense for us raising awareness as well as raising income.
Yeah.
I don't think Sexual Abuse and Sexual Violence Awareness Week is really very well known outside of the sector. I certainly didn't know about that awareness week before joining, whereas I have heard about, Carers Week or Volunteers Week or other sort of weeks that we kind of recognise throughout the year. So I really wanted to kind of embellish on those comms there. And also with International Women's Day, I think it can feel a little bit like it's become just a day of celebration, which is really important to recognise contributions that women give, but it's also really important to recognise that there is still like a lot of misogyny in our society and a real gender imbalance, especially with sexual violence. Like it's majority women and girls. So really wanted to kind of take back that day and make it a day of celebration for the challenge to end on that day, but also about having important messaging being shared on that day as well. So did definitely want to kind of have a challenge around that time. And then it was very much about, I think, wanting to just kind of make something that was easy and accessible. So that was that kind of inclusivity angle, but also so as a team, we could just get it up running really quickly. We were, sort of mentioned kind of a smaller team. We're even smaller then, I think. There was less of us then. And we were just really seeing it as a pilot and just wanting to go for it. So it wanted to be something that was kind of quite a quick and easy messaging to sort of get out there as well. And I guess it wasn't really about just getting the income raised. It was about us getting to know our supporters a little bit better, like what resonated with them and building up our contact lists. Like those were kind of key KPIs and considerations for us when planning it as well.
I think that's really important and something that's very easy to fall into a pitfall of. I know that I've very much done it in the past, where I want to plan and plan and plan to make something the best it can be a priori. And actually, a lot of the times it's better to have, a minimal viable product model, try it out, test it, learn whether it's going to resonate, learn whether it's going to work, and then build on those early learnings.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good approach. And I think for anyone listening, I think that's a key takeaway already in this conversation. If you're thinking of something, think about how to make it easy for yourself and how you can start learning from the process.
And that's the amazing thing about virtual fundraisers, that you can get them out quite quickly and it's not normally too much investment. Like you're not buying places in challenge events or setting up your own challenge event or putting on, there's all that kind of logistical costs out there, which I think can make it like very easy to turn around and kind of get that buy-in from a more senior level if that's what you sort of need as a fundraiser in your organisation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, getting that buy-in from either senior management or trustees for a new initiative can be tough. So lowering that initial cost, yeah, super important. You mentioned logistics, and that's a slight segue into one of the things I wanted to ask you about. So naturally, with a challenge fundraising event, you, as a charity, you set up the event, so to speak, and then a fundraiser will come and register for that event, and they will fundraise on your behalf. You had in your most recent Step Out in Solidarity over 100 fundraisers I saw. And so that those sorts of numbers means that you're getting to a point where it's basically impossible to keep tabs on every single fundraiser. So I was wondering how you balance giving fundraisers autonomy, because it's really important that they feel that they have ownership and they get to fundraise, but then also, like, on the one side, sort of protecting your brand, so to speak, but then also on the other side with something which is quite sensitive, you don't want to be in a position where your fundraisers might be saying things that could be misinformation or potentially damaging in any way, shape, or form. So I was wondering how you balance that aspect of it.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good question, because a big part of what we do, which I didn't mention, is that we are about dispelling myths about rape and sexual violence in society, where there can be a lot of victim blaming or misinformation. So that is something we always think about with our communications. When we did this the first time, like I said, I thought it was about kind of building on that, people wanting to be in solidarity with survivors. But the insights we gained the first time round, because we just finished the second time, were that actually a lot of our supporters are survivors. In fact, the majority of them are. So I do try to avoid being too prescriptive about any messaging, because I don't want to feel like a survivor is being told how to tell their own story. And that's very much about the Rape Crisis England Wales way and the rape crisis movement. It's all about empowerment. We sort of give information and tools to survivors, but it's really an empowerment model and approach. So I wouldn't want a supporter feel disempowered about how they share things. But to make things easier, and so there is a kind of standard approach, when we use Just Giving the first year, we used Infuse this year as platforms. We did populate the fundraising pages with a template with kind of key stats in, key information, so that can still be tweaked by any fundraiser, but it's there for them as a baseline. And then we were sort of keeping in touch with them throughout the challenge, throughout the 30 days. We were sort of sharing podcasts that our CEO had appeared on, talking about, I think it was around the 2% in the criminal justice system that actually gets to trial.
Right.
And different kind of information and reports, just so if they wanted to read it, they can do. And we share our Get Informed pages and our stats and things. So it's about, I think, providing that information, but not feeling like you're saying you can only talk about rape crisis this way, because I don't think that would really sit well with us as a team.
Yeah.
And to be honest, they're normally way more eloquent about like expressing the cause than I could ever be, because they've often received support from a local centre, or they use our helpline, and they're just like really talking about how important it is. So I think they're like model fundraisers in that way.
Incredible. And I suppose as well, someone who is likely to sign up to fundraise for you, who is a supporter of you, whether they are a survivor or they're not a survivor, is likely to know that actually the best messaging they can give is to if it gets to like the specifics, let's say they're in a situation where someone approaches them and wants to know more, then they would signpost to Rape Crisis anyway as a supporter. So I suppose there's that kind of natural balance of they can speak to their own experience if they feel comfortable doing so. But they also know, as someone who's fundraising, I know who to signpost to if someone actually has some specific questions. So it's actually works quite well in that sense, I suppose.
No, I think it really does actually. And our Get Informed page is like one of our most visited pages on our website as well. So although often people are visiting to get help, they're also sometimes, they are looking for like information for themselves or for someone else. So it is something that's easy to find and easy to be shared.
Great. Well, good that it is easy to find. And we will, of course, be putting plenty of links in description and that sort of thing. I suppose on the back of that, and this is for Step Out in Solidarity, but then also Rape Crisis as a larger organization or a collection of organizations. Naturally, the topic that you're talking about is sensitive, but at the same time, it is important to raise awareness about the issues and the systematic challenges of getting support. And you mentioned also criminal justice system, things that you'd like to see change there. How do you balance the fact that you need to raise support with also the fact that by its very nature it's a potentially triggering subject matter, then there's an element of needing to tread lightly when engaging in sort of mass communications or any form of other potentially large scale initiatives?
Yeah, I like this talking point because it's something I'm always thinking about actually. Because it can be really triggering, and that's not something we ever want to do. Is feel like we're re-traumatizing any kind of supporter of us as an organisation. Our media and comms officer is really amazing at that. She's always kind of making sure whenever she does just general social media posting that's always kind of there as a, take care of yourself when reading this. And that I sort of echoed that with all of my messaging around Step Out in Solidarity, sort of when I was sharing the podcasts and reports and the keeping in touch emails, like to take care when reading, letting them know what was coming if they were going to read or listen, and always kind of signposting to our support if needed, as well as the helpline and like the local centres. We have some grounding techniques and resources on our website, so we will often kind of signposting to those as well. I didn't really bombard too much with information as well, because like I said, quite often these supporters would already know all these things or have had personal experience about them. It was more kind of giving them the information if they wanted to tell people who they were asking for donations from without having to get into that personal experience like you mentioned. Because as a society, we do need to talk about sexual violence more. It isn't over there in a corner, just an isolated part of society. That kind of stranger danger thing, 1 out of 2 victims and survivors know their perpetrator, and that does make people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But if you're going to end the problem of sexual violence, then we kind of have to bring that out into the open and have those conversations, and not kind of just brush it on the carpet and hope it'll go away. So yeah, it is a balance, and I'm always thinking about who the audience is and what I should say, and making sure that there's always a signpost to support if they do find it triggering as well, as a at the very least, so they know they have somewhere else to go.
It's interesting. And I guess a big part of it is, well, I mean, you've spoken to it, but the considering the, the medium by which you're communicating, you can kind of roughly know what potential reach is, and using that you can adapt and tailor your language, and also the context as well is going to be really important, in a in a small in-person group, it's going to be very different to like a Twitter post, for example, and you can kind of balance out what you're saying based on where you're saying it and to whom you're saying it.
Yeah, and even with the challenge, within the challenge itself, like the emails content was different to like what I would say in the Facebook group, because that's maybe a smaller number of supporters that chose to join the Facebook group, and that was more of an informal space. And yeah, so you are always, I guess that's the big thing about fundraising generally, isn't it? You're always tailoring your communications to different audiences.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now the Facebook group, that's something else that I wanted to talk to you about. So fantastic that you brought that up. The It was quite impressive that that you took I suppose, at least two-pronged, if not multi-pronged approach to Step Out in Solidarity, in the sense that not only was it a fundraising challenge, but you also looked to build a community around the challenge and build a community within your supporter group. And my understanding that was because you had quite a few supporters, but they're quite disparate, and actually you wanted to bring them together and create that community around the organization and within your supporter group. So I suppose, is that the right, have I understood that correctly? Were there other motivations that that made you want to build that Facebook community? And also I'd be interested to hear how it went, sort of whether there are any like favorite interactions or favorite maybe positive externalities that you had from building that community.
Yeah, no, you're spot on with why we did it. It's a virtual challenge, so we're not unfortunately bringing people together to do this in person. So we wanted to create a space where they had an opportunity to speak to one another within like a closed Facebook group that we could also facilitate and moderate as well. You know, fundraisers is called being in solidarity, and that being in solidarity often means being part of community. So yeah, we wanted to make sure we had that sense of community as much as possible within a virtual space. We had about 50 members or 51 members of the Facebook group this year. So about half people registered.
That's pretty good going.
Yeah, really good going. And there was it wasn't like people posting non-stop, but I think there were some really positive examples of supporters communicating and supporting each other. It might have just been sharing, you know, that there were signs of spring when they were out on their walk one day, or I think there was one that was actually quite emotional. That was the anniversary of their court case being delayed. So they're kind of discussing that it meant a lot for them to be kind of walking out that day. Sometimes they were discussing like maybe one of the podcasts was sort of shared in the emails and how it had made them feel. So it wasn't super active, but it wasn't also just us posting it. They were not having a response. They were just posting themselves, and that was really nice. I don't know how you can kind of get that more active without it then feeling like you're kind of taking over the space when you want it to be more of their community space. But I think we'll always have it as an option. It's a really lovely thing to do. And it wasn't actually, you know, for fundraisers listening, it wasn't a lot of work. Like there's, you know, we've got several staff members who've got access to our Facebook. And so it's just like kind of checking in for when there are posts. But because there wasn't loads and loads of activity, it wasn't like very onerous at all. And we didn't have any issues with how group members interacted with each other. It was, you know, all very positive, respectful interactions.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And we created rules that you have to adhere to anyway, which you can do with any Facebook group, about how you speak to one another. So you kind of say you're agreeing to that when you go in. But we did that the first year, and we did that this year. And it's something we would definitely do again.
Wonderful. I think that point on trying to encourage interaction is difficult, isn't it? Because my feeling is that actually just setting it up and letting things be natural is usually the best way to do it. It can easily become a little bit like yeah, it can become a bit contrived and a bit too. The last thing you want to see in a community group is only the moderator's post. That's it's better, I think, for it to be a little bit quiet than it to just be 20 posts of the same
Yeah.
person who's the person who works for a charity.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think, yeah, if you do things that are engaging, like running a poll and there's lots of comments afterwards, and that kind of helps. But if it's just, yeah,
Yeah,
one thing, it's not the best.
absolutely. I wanted to come back to the inclusivity piece. I think that's really important and something I want to highlight. So the base challenge was to do something for every day for 100 days. So
Every day for 30 days. Yeah.
30 days,
Yeah.
sorry, for 30 days. Sorry, getting my numbers confused. Over 100 fundraisers, 30 days.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've just split, anyone listening, I've just split the challenge down by a third. So in a sentence. Um, anyway, however, what you said was that people had the ability to choose what that challenge was, and that's fantastic because it means that you're not you haven't automatically put up a barrier to people's inclusion. I wondered, first, is there anything from there that you'd like to correct or to add? And then also, I'd be really interested to hear whether you have any um, interesting, any super creative, any, you know, personal favorite. I know you're not allowed to have favorites, but, any maybe highlights or what have you that you'd like to share.
So we really, yeah, to go back to the inclusivity thing, we really wanted that mirrored in the messaging and promoting, but also in the imagery we use. So we very much had like women in a wheelchair, women walking, running, just, yeah, anything and everything was kind of there if they want to do something physical, because quite often these challenges, people want to like commit to doing something physical perhaps, but we also kept it very much open to like kind of choose your challenge as well. Um, so with the kind of, I guess, physical spectrum, we had someone who was maybe less mobile. I think they were doing 2,000 steps a day because they'd actually had really bad back pain. So that was still an amazing kind of challenge for them. And then we had somebody who was doing 10,000 steps a day because they're quite active, and that was like the big challenge they wanted to set themselves. So I really liked that there's kind of that breadth of like what you could choose and how you did it. But then I did really love how creative people got. We had, not this year, but I think it was the year before, someone who played the piano every day. And she would like upload a video to Instagram of like a different song that she was playing. So it was just like her committing to like, yeah, doing something creative and musical. And then we had like a really impressive fundraiser who was actually going through cancer treatment at the time, but she was still out walking every day if she could, but also painting a picture of something she saw on her walk. And she was sharing these beautiful pictures of, just like her running shoes or flowers she's seen, or any kind of different thing. And I think that was hopefully a really lovely thing for her that she then had like 30 pictures of her challenge at the end of it. So I didn't, again, like not favorites, but there's some really lovely examples of people like thinking out the box and something that kind of suits their lifestyle that they can definitely commit to doing for that amount of time. Because I know we cut it down by a third, but you're going 100 to 30. 30 days is still quite a long time to do something every single day.
It is.
I did step out as part of it, and I found it quite hard making sure I wanted to do 10,000 steps a day, and I couldn't commit to that in the end. Oh. It ended up being between 5,000 and 10,000 steps. I kept running out of time. But I was still getting out and doing something every day, which was really nice to do.
Absolutely. No, I love that it recognises that there's no one size fits all, and when it comes to a challenge, so enabling people to choose what the challenge is wonderful. I think to close us off, I wondered whether there were any pieces of learning that you have taken from the last couple of years of doing Step Out in Solidarity, that could be generalizable, if that's a word, to other charities thinking of doing a fundraising challenge?
I think make it relevant to you is like my biggest takeaway, because since the pandemic, during the pandemic and since then, there's been a steep rise in like virtual fundraisers, and I actually noticed a difference. Like February and March seemed a bit of a quiet time when I did it Step Out first year, and then there were actually a lot more virtual fundraisers actually happening around that time this year. So I think there's a real saturation in the market, and it can be tempting, I think, because it's, like I said, it can be quite a quick thing to turn around, that you kind of just go like, oh, I'll do 30 jumping jacks a day for 30 days or 100 squats a day for 10 days. But I think this might be subjective for me, but I think if it makes sense about why you're doing it for your organization, whether it's around a key date or what the actual challenge is that you're setting or something like that, it will resonate with your supporters so much more. And it will kind of cut through maybe a lot of the other things that are happening around that time to encourage them to sign up. I think set like a modest target to start. I think we've kept it quite low. We set like £150 per person to raise, and we kept it the same for this year, because being a virtual challenge and the thing that you could choose your own challenge, it's not really the same as doing like a half marathon or those kind of things. So we wanted to again make it feel inclusive in that way, that it wasn't too big a target to reach for any fundraiser. We had people massively overachieve. I think, it's about an average of £200 per fundraising page, but some people were raising £700,000. So you can still raise a lot of money even if you keep that kind of target low. And that just maximizes the number of people that will sign up, because it won't feel like it's too big an ask. I think we haven't really touched on it, but like using social media advertising can be really great. You don't need a huge budget. You can have like £10 a week or something, and it's just helps you reach maybe a slightly new audience on Facebook, but of supporters that would be interested in causes. So I think you can tick things like to support charities, or in our case, like feminist causes or things like that. And then that helps you kind of reach a different audience who might not already be following you on Facebook. And that isn't too hard a thing to do. I mean, I'm not the one doing those things. Our media and comms officers, but I think it's quite simple to set up different Facebook ads. But I think my main thing, like we said at the start, is like, just don't be afraid to try. Like get out there and do it. Like it's really, what's the worst thing that could go wrong? It might be a flop, but you might still get like people added to your email contact list who might be interested in doing it again, and you'll have raised a little bit of money, and you get insight, you get learnings to try something new next time. I think it's really important to kind of just not feel stuck in that planning stage, like you said, that you feel you can't really just get out and try things.
Wonderful. We're ending on a fantastic call to action from Sara there. If you're thinking about doing it, just go ahead and do it, and just try and see if it works. And even if it maybe doesn't, quote unquote, doesn't work, you're still going to learn, and then you can build on that for next time. Sara, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me about Step Out in Solidarity and rape crisis more generally. Is there anything that you think I should have asked that I didn't ask? Is there anything you'd like to add onto our conversation?
No, I don't think so. They were really comprehensive talking points. So thank you, Zach. I've really enjoyed this. It's really great for me to kind of reflect on how things have gone as well. And I hope it's really useful for everybody listening.
Good. No, absolutely. I'm sure it will be. I've learned a lot in this conversation, and it's been, I've really enjoyed it too. It's been a really good time. Is there anywhere that people can go to find out about you or the organisation? What should they do?
So our website is rapecrisis.org.uk. And depending what you're visiting for, we've kind of got our Get Involved, our Key Statistics page. We've also got our Get Help page.
Fantastic. I would absolutely go and encourage people to look at those, going back to our point earlier about how it's important that we are all more informed about sexual violence, and we are all more equipped to have those conversations if we need to. So go and look at those resources. But in the meantime, thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
And I will see everyone next time.
Thanks, Zach. Bye.
Bye. Hello, me again. Each episode, I give you a conversation prompt to help you reflect on what you've just heard. So, grab a colleague and have a chat about what sort of fundraising challenge might align with your charity's mission, and then have a think about whether there is an easy way to test it out. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and I hope to see you next time.